intimidated being on a panel with such august academics that when I was preparing my presentation, I wanted a fancy title with a colon, and then subheads, and then also annotations. My presentation is called Mything the Mark, colon. Now look at how the so-called liberal media is actually a tool for the right. Further, one reporter turned editor's thoughts based on nearly 20 years of covering elections. Next slide. All right, we're going to first talk about this whole business of this bias, a bias that usually is leveled at publications like Winnipeg Free Press or the CBC, who actually spend a lot of time paying attention to politics. So we're going to go right into the viewer mailbag. This one came to us during the course of the election. It was from Robert Peterson. First time caller. Not necessarily a long time fan. Hi. I'm very disappointed in your daily coverage of the election. Every day you put onto the front page of your newspaper or online at least one negative story covering the Conservatives. Either you do it for all the parties or none of them. I realize you are a left-leaning newspaper. I love how they actually they knew what we were. But you should put out the news with the 5 W's only and let the public decide whether that is right or wrong. Save your personal views and scaremongering for the editorial pages where they belong. I am currently a subscriber, but may not be for long if this bias reporting continues. By the way, I am not a card-carrying voter of any party and will vote based on what I think is right for my family. Sincerely, Robert Peterson. Thank you, Robert. Robert, this came in the course of the campaign. It doesn't say anything specific. They weren't railing at any one particular thing, but you will hear from the Robert Petersons of the world at various points of pretty much every election. And I think what's interesting is in their mind, and let's for a moment pretend that that was a sincere expression of concern on our reporting, and he was not put up to this in any way, shape, or fashion, and a line left-leaning newspaper came to him honestly, and he wanted to make clear that he's not a card-carrying member. Let's talk a moment about bias, because I want to dispel the myth here that there is no bias in the newsroom. There is. Every single decision that we make is based on something. We have to make determinations that this story is important, or this story is not as important. In the case of the Free Press, we have made a decision that the fact a number of First Nations in northern Manitoba do not have running water is an important issue. And I'm not going to apologize for that. We have written about it. We will hold politicians to account, and we will continue to drive that issue until there is change. Similarly, we've been looking at an ongoing project on FASD. We think there needs to be more public understanding of this. We believe there needs to be more public action. And by public action, we're talking not just at the school level, not just in the home, not just in the province, but also federally. Right? So we're trying to hold as many people's feet to the fire because we've made a decision. We have a bias. We think it is wrong that certain things can continue in our society and that people need to be aware of them so that action can be taken. Right? So that's one thing. Moreover, all our reporters, if they're thinking people, have views, they have opinions, they have thoughts, and they have bias, okay? You would have to be a pretty boring, ignorant, ill-informed person to be working in a newsroom. And I'm not saying we don't have those. But the point is, they have biases, right? Moreover, I'd like to think that all my reporters vote. We are pursuing a project this year called the Noxie Project, which is designed to ensure that more Manitobans mark ballots on October 4, 2004 than have done in the previous years. I think we could be accused of hypocrisy if we're telling Manitobans to go vote, but I'm saying, for God's sake, don't vote. Okay? I don't want you engaging here, don't want you to express views. That's something that's done within the privacy of the voting booth. They should be allowed that right. The key test, however, is how do you deal with your biases? Okay? At the end of the day, we work for the readers. Our job is to tell readers not what to think, okay? But what to think about. So I'm hoping and trusting that my reporters are aware of their biases and can put them aside and deal with them in a way so that that doesn't influence their reporting. Now, so we've already determined that there is a bias. The question then becomes, are we looking for perfection? Because that's a really hard thing to achieve. I think what we're trying to do is look for impartiality. And I'm going to borrow a phrase from the Canadian Press Style Book, and that's something that the Free Press subscribes to, and it's probably found in every newsroom, and by newsroom I mean radio, television, and print. So here's what they say about impartiality in its statement of principles. Impartiality is something like exercise, and I like the fact they reference it to exercise, because you have to work out regularly to build tone and strength. The best exercise for impartiality is to stop regularly and ask yourself, am I being as impartial, honest, and fair as I can be? So, that's a little talk about what we should be doing. Just a couple of other, trying to address misconceptions that may be out there and may be influenced the Roger Petersons in the world. One, the editorial board is separate from the newsroom and they don't call the shots. Okay? They have their opinions. They are speaking on behalf of the paper. They come up with their opinions in ways only to our editorial board. And what's interesting is our editorial board in recent elections has been endorsing the Conservatives. I only mention that because the Roger Petersons think that we're obviously a little in the newspaper. But that doesn't matter. The point is that there is a separate distinction between what goes on in the newsroom and what goes on the editorial pages. Now, further complicating the sort of this view about bias is that I could get all our reporters on the same page. I don't know if you've worked with reporters, but they don't take direction well. They're kind of hardwired to oppose, to speak out, to want to do things their own way. If there could be, and we're talking sort of the allegation that there might be some sort of corporate bias built in because of our ownership group or some other conspiracy that you may have seen on X-Files, I don't think anyone could get our reporters all marching in one line. So that makes that whole perception of bias very difficult to get done. The other thing is that they're going to do their own thing in their own way. You could take 10 reporters and have them all covering the same event. You might get 10 different versions of that story. It's largely dependent on how they see things and how they choose to present facts. There will be similarities, but on any given day, how the story that appears in the Free Press, and I dare say a story that you see on TV or you hear on radio, is going to be influenced by that reporter, their level of experience, their understanding of the issues, other time pressures that they are facing. All those things are being stirred and are going to lead to the story. So, the other thing is it a case of bias, or is it, again, back to the individual reporter? There is quite often a view that a reporter's job is to challenge whoever it is in authority. And so if you're the government of the day, at some point it just seems like everyone's out to hammer, or in certain outlets they're out to hammer you. And the fact that they used to hammer the people who were in government when you were in opposition may be lost because right now you're the one under attack. But I'll give one example, because I'm trying my best not to seem completely self-serving here. The Free Press in the 1990s ran an advertising campaign about promoting our reporters. And in the case of one of our senior legend reporter at the time, the ad was Don Campbell, the real opposition. Now, that was probably an example of like not really thinking and hubris. But I think it was the wrong message to send. And I can't imagine what the film and Tories looking at that ad thought. I mean, he's there to oppose us? Is that his sole role? And that would probably feed into certain views. And that's something that, quite frankly, the Free Press brought on itself, and I'm glad we're not doing it again. Well, I guess what I'm trying to say, too, is that there can be unfairness. Remember, we're looking for impartiality, not perfection. And I don't want to, in any way, shape, or form, suggest that the media is perfect. In my time covering elections, both provincially here in Manitoba and then federally, I've seen lots of things that probably weren't very good. I was at Niagara Falls on Stockwell Day. Stockwell Day, loved the whole idea of backdrops and images. Remember the wetsuit and the jet ski? Well, this one here was perfect because he wanted to talk about the brain drain and all those jobs flowing down across the falls and into New York State, just across the line. The sad, unfortunate bit for Stockwell Day on this matter is that every single one of the reporters, save one, bought the image. Unfortunately, Eric Sorensen of CBC grew up in the Niagara area. And he knew, as did all of us, but we just couldn't think because we're so mesmerized by the image. There's the waterfall, romance, honeymoon capital, day one of the campaign, and it was he who recognized that, of course, the Great Lakes drain up through the St. Lawrence, and all of a sudden, Stockwell Day on day one of the campaign had a big problem. And there can sometimes be a media pact that takes place, and he was under siege. It was a slip of the tongue. It didn't change from what the economic message he was trying to say. And at the time, productivity and issues vis-a-vis the U.S. economy and Canada were very real and serious issues, and they were proposing a solution for it. The funny thing was, while everyone was beating up Stockwell Day, Jean Chrétien was on a stage, I think, at Western Ontario, and he didn't even know members of his own caucus as he was introducing them. I would argue, at some level, that a misstep on the drainage of the Great Lakes versus the fact that someone who's in your caucus and you're calling him Jason Kennedy, not a good thing. But the attention did not go to Chrétien in the way that it did. I would also argue, and Stockwell Day was making some comments on this at the Conservative Convention in Ottawa, Stockwell Day's religious views became very much a topic for debate in the 2000 campaign. And probably unfairly. We don't normally spend a lot of time looking at the personal lives of politicians, specifically religious matters, unless there's a real context. And it became a big issue because of his views, especially on creationism. That wasn't part of the campaign, and a lot of media jumped on that. But at the risk of making the point now that liberal media is all jumping all over the Conservatives, think to the leadership race between Jean Chrétien and Paul Martin. I think even the Paul Martinites would recognize that they were getting way more favorable treatment from the media than was Jean Chrétien. Paul Martin was new. Paul Martin was exciting. Paul Martin was a juggernaut. He was going to paint this nation red and walk on water and do all sorts of things because he was Paul Martin. Jean Chrétien was just yesterday's man. And so I make that point because it's interesting to see that was an issue, obviously, that affected the Liberal Party, but the media coverage of one political party was clearly tilted in one way and to the detriment. So there probably wasn't the impartiality, wasn't the ideals that the media should have been doing on that. And there's lots of reasons why. I don't have time to get into it. It probably had a lot to do with the communication strategy of the Martinites and how they've been working so hard to make sure that all the media understood what was going on. And probably, because reporters are human too, a little desire to curry favor with the incoming administration. So, we're having a little talk about what we do and how we do it. Let's talk about the complaint. And we'll go back to the Roger Petersons of the world. In my time of covering politics, and I have, off the top of my head, I've done more than 15, been a part of more than 15 campaigns, provincially, federally, and by-elections. You don't normally hear from the NDP, the Liberals, the Greens. You know what, the Communists, they've got lots to complain about because we don't even cover them. And I don't hear from them. But those on the right, there's something about them. There's something about how they view politics and how they view media coverage that they'll let us know very quickly about how poorly we're doing. I'm going to give you a couple examples. I was the Ottawa correspondent for the Free Press, and I was covering all the Unite the Right rallies that were going on as Reform gave way to Alliance, gave way to the Conservative Party. And I was in Ottawa at a convention, and when you're the Free Press reporter covering a convention, you got to find some actual delegates. So I'm trolling along as Preston Manning's laying out his big idea, and I find some people from Manitoba. I go, hi, I'm covering this campaign. I'd like to speak to some Manitoba delegates, and away out there from Morden, Carmen, and that kind of stuff. And I'm from the Winnipeg Free Press. He's the guy from the Free Press. I know what you're here to do. Yeah, you're gonna give it to us again. That's what you're here to do. But I had barely opened my mouth. And finally, I had to say to the guys, I'm sorry, you guys are the official opposition, and you're beating up on the only Manitoba media outlet who thinks it's important enough to come out here and actually cover you guys. But it was interesting, right from the moment they heard Free Press, they were prepared to jump down my throat. It wasn't like they had said, oh yeah, we read your story yesterday, you're full of shit. Can I say that? Yeah. It's our cafe! That's okay, it's the U2011 banners behind us. So it was just interesting how quickly, and they were mad, they were angry. Another example was from the, I'm going to deal with, I don't have anything empirical, I only have anecdotes, because I'm not really an academic, but I got cool colon in my subject, headline. 2000, it's January 2006, St. Catharines. Stephen Harper, as the Conservative leader, is going to be on his way to an election win. You can feel it. The Martin campaign, the wheels are falling off the bus. Now Harper tide is starting to grow. Crowds are getting really big, and so we're at this evening event in St. Catharines, and the hotel ballroom is packed. I mean, people have been showing up 2 hours before. They've been working so hard for years and pushing this rock up this mountain. Stephen Harper is days away from becoming Canada's next Prime Minister. So there's lots of excitement, and there's lots of media. And as it is at these events, there are a media riser platform, largely for the TV cameras, so they can shoot and beam those images, and I think in many cases live across the country. So picture a hotel room, ballroom, with a stage up the front, and about 2/3 of the way back, some risers that are about this high, and a bunch of camera operators and journalists standing up there to cover this event. The only problem was this was such a packed room that there were a bunch of people behind who come to see Harper, and they couldn't see him because of where they were crammed in. There was an obstructed view. And I'm sort of sitting in the back part of this media bullpen, and I can hear them like, oh, God's sakes, we can't see them, and all those cameras. Hey, down in front, we can't see you. Hey, what are you guys doing? So I walked over and said, hey, you know what? They put the cameras there so that the TV networks can get the speech across the country to people who may be watching. And they looked at me, well, get out of our way. We came here to see. And I said, no, but the party has told the media to be here. That's where we can't go anywhere else. If I step out of this bullpen, the RCMP are going to arrest me. And I walked away. And because I figured I'm not going to win this battle. And I can hear, goddamn CBC, liberal, whatever. And I turned around and I said, you know, this says I'm with the Winnipeg Free Press, so I'm not with the CBC. And if you're complaining about people standing on the riser, maybe you should look and tell Monty Solberg, Chuck Strahl, and the others who are there spinning us to get out of the way too. And I found it interesting, again, the media cannot win at some level when we're trying to cover things. That perception that exists among the right, and I don't even get into what's going on in the US, but just in Canada, I think is there for a reason, and it's one that's perpetuated in part because I think it works to the benefit of the right. And I'm going to focus my comments specifically here on the federal Conservative Party. I'm not going to get into Hugh McFadden's team or even Sam Cates, even though Sam Cates is not a conservative. There's more partisan politics at City Hall and all that kind of stuff. If you're able to shoot the messenger, you're able to undermine the message. Okay? You can dismiss, you don't have to respond to, you can complain about the mainstream media, and especially when you're trying to speak to your core members, you can say, don't believe what you read in the Free Press. Don't pay any attention to that report you're on CBC, because they're out to get us. Don't believe me? I have exhibits. It's a Vic Taves email. These are not personal emails. These emails are distributed far and wide by the Public Safety Minister of Canada. Clearly someone who wants to be a columnist based on the length of the emails he sends. Dear friends, colleagues, and others. Friends helping friends. Isn't that what this is all about? It certainly is when it comes to Mia Rabson advancing her political agenda and that of her allies, I should say, in the pages of the Winnipeg Free Press. And to top it off, it is wonderful to have Paul Samyn, a Red Friendly editor, top off her article with an appropriate headline. Vic, I don't do the headlines, but I understand your point. Nothing, it seems, is too much trouble for their friends. This is but one example of a series of emails that Vic Taves has sent about the Free Press coverage. What's interesting is he doesn't want to speak to us, doesn't want to respond frequently to our media requests, and has no problem then attacking the Free Press coverage. I don't want to say we're the only ones that have been a target of that kind of attack, but it's one that seems to work, and it's one that's going to go further. Just one last point to finish up, because I don't know where we're going. A lot of questions about the new majority government. What was interesting at the Tory convention that emerged over the weekend, that their latest appeal to donors included a line that encouraged them to, it appealed to the party so they could fight back against the, quote, hailstorm of negative attacks that are already raining down on our democratically elected government. Don't for a moment think, the Harper Tories, for all their concerns about battles with the media, are very media savvy, and I dare say this attack and this approach that they've used has been successful, and it's what we'll continue to.